I've been a fan of Sam Peckinpah's ever since I saw The Wild Bunch. That was the first of several films I've seen of his. Aside from having one of the coolest names in film history, Sam Peckinpah's work has often plunged into issues of changing times as well as the dark sides to humanity and society. Certainly I consider him one of my favorite filmmakers, especially having seen some of his best work. The Wild Bunch, Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, and Cross of Iron were all great films that he made. But now I've finally seen the film that, more than any other film he ever made, has given him a reputation for controversy. This was to Peckinpah what Natural Born Killers was to Oliver Stone, and what A Clockwork Orange was to Stanley Kubrick. Straw Dogs. Where to start with this? It's one of the most controversial films ever made, depicting psychological struggle between a married couple and several of the villagers in a small English town. The film's been attacked for being violent, for being sexist, hell, for being downright misogynistic. But just like Natural Born Killers and A Clockwork Orange, this is selling the film very short. It does not glorify violence at all. That's not the message we're made to interpret. I certainly didn't get that from the film. What I got was a brilliant take on humanity and ethics and fundamental questions that leave you thinking long after the movie's over. For example, if an underage girl seduces a grown, mentally disabled man into kissing her, who's more guilty? Now, the scene in question doesn't necessarily go out of its way to ask that question, but the fact was, I ended up thinking about that as I watched the scene. I could go into some of the more famous scenes, but that would give too much away. But I will say that the movie starts when David Sumner first shows up at the village. His wife, Amy, once lived in this small English town. Despite that, the villagers treat the newcomers with passive hostility, barely masking their contempt for this small, weak-looking intellectual. What astonished me while watching the film isn't how hostile the lower-class villagers are, but how hostile David and Amy are towards each other. They bicker and spar throughout their scenes together, and even when it seems like they're intimate, there's no real relaxed atmosphere. I mean, this is because there's an internal suppression going on. Amy isn't physically attracted to her husband, who's a very cold person. David shuts himself away, content to fiddle with mathematics and science. Amy barely reaches out to him anymore, as if giving up any hope of connection. Instead, she turns to passive-aggressive action to get to him. The simplest sentence is used to try and challenge him out of his isolation. There's also drama outside this couple's home. A number of the villagers begin lusting after Amy, and as a result, begin to psychologically terrorize the couple. One of the men in the village, a very physically imposing man named Charlie Venner, was once in a relationship with Amy. Amy regards Charlie with mixed feelings. I didn't get it at first, but the sheer psychological war going on between these people is astonishing once you see it. Charlie is drawn lustfully towards Amy, who secretly feels the same way but is married to David. David and Charlie are both hostile and envious of each other for different reasons, some of which involving Amy, who for her part seems to subconsciously bait them both into proving their masculinity. Sam Peckinpah got a lot of trouble for this film, but in a way it's the most powerful film he ever made. Humans, he shows us, have animalistic sides, and when our humanity is peeled back, we give in to these animalistic thoughts and desires. Take, for example, the most controversial moment of the film. I won't say what it includes, but when you watch the film, consider some of the conflicts I've just mentioned. It makes that controversial moment so much more than what people have labeled it as. The film is not a glorious call to vigilantism. It's a pessimistic look at human nature and the effects of violence. David isn't a hero. He's a violent man trying to suppress his violence through intellect and cold logic. When he's pushed into a corner, he becomes a ticking bomb, and we're never sure whether he'll burst his boundaries. The film is not much talked about these days. Actually, a remake of the film's coming out this year. I don't know if it'll be as good as this version. It's got a very high bar to match up to, that's for sure. Straw Dogs is just unblinking, uncompromising, and as a result, controversial. You might be tempted to just write it off as an alcoholic director using violence and sex to make a sleazy 70s movie to fulfill his own weird fantasies, but I urge you to consider aspects of the film and see the layers beneath the surface. It makes for a much different film than it might seem at first. Not to say it isn't flawed, but it's certainly a classic. Dustin Hoffman has never before been in this kind of role as far as I can recall, and it's pretty stunning to think this is the same man who I just watched play Izzy Panofsky in Barney's version. Susan George is a very daring actress who's given a very hard job to do, and she pulled it off completely. And the other characters are played wonderfully by their actors. They all do their part in this carefully crafted film. A film in which Sam Peckinpah attempted to purge the audiences of violence, having seen it in its horrific detail on the screen. I think I'll finish this review with a little bit of trivia. The title of this film comes from the Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu, who wrote, "Heaven and earth are not humane, and regard the people as straw dogs."